Greetings. Welcome to the AI Files podcast. If you're looking to stay up to date on the AI, this is the podcast for you. I'm Shadab Hussain. I'm the director of AI at Microsoft, and I'm your co-host.
Hello, everybody. Jamie Basilico, as you know already. I'm the other co-host here for the AI Files. My day job is a data and AI technical specialist and architect. And as a reminder, please note this is not an official Microsoft channel, so the views and opinions expressed by myself and Shadab are our own and do not represent the views of Microsoft. Welcome to this latest episode of the AI Files Labs. In this episode, I'm going to be going through Foundry workflows. I'll explain what they are and why they're going to be important as you build multi-agent systems. So you see on the screen, I've got a quick little snippet of a workflow. In the initial version of Foundry or AI Studio, which then became Foundry, and then Foundry's got a UI, you were able to build something called a connected agent. In simple terms, if you were building some multi-agent orchestration, this is a way of doing it. You have a orchestrator agent, and then that can call out to X number of agents underneath it. And then you would use an LLM to determine, well, which route should it take? And you do that by giving it instructions on the connected agent. Well, that doesn't exist anymore in the new Foundry user interface. That's been replaced by workflows. And workflows are very powerful because they actually allow you to do those connected agent capabilities that I just mentioned, but it also brings in other context, other programmatic capabilities, such as doing if-then conditionals, being able to do for loops, connect out to system properties, or even custom code, and I'll explain what some of that looks like. So it's more powerful, but the problem is you cannot take your existing agents and those connected agents that you have within the previous version of Foundry UI. They don't come into the new interface. You have to rebuild it. So I'm talking with a couple of organizations. One of the questions that I got is, well, where do we do this? How do we connect our agent? Because when you look at the agent build inside of the new Foundry, it doesn't exist. So how do you do it? Well, again, it's through workflows. So I'm going to spend the next, 10 minutes or so just walking through how to do that. And I'm also going to give you a little tip on how to do it very easily. And again, I did it based upon how I was actually trying to do this myself. So again, real world example on doing it. So let me flip over, and I'm going to bring the code up into the stage. And let me turn this into big. So, all right. So what you're looking at is a original Foundry project. And how do I know that? Well, I'm in the old Foundry user interface. So I have a lot of different demos that I typically do, and this one is related to finance. So this is a finance project. So in this case, what I am doing is I'm connecting. And again, I have my project. By the way, I'm skipping a couple steps. That is like connecting into Foundry, authenticating. I have a project already, so I'm going directly into that project. So inside of this old Foundry environment, I have a series of agents that I've constructed. Again, nothing crazy. This is a analyst agent, which is the orchestrator, and it calls into either this filing summarizer, which looks after 10Ks, and then peer comparer, which will look at Excel documents and actually do some comparison of the numbers and the financials that are in there. The agents themselves, don't worry about what they are. That's high level. That's what they do. If I look at this analyst agent, and let me just zoom in a little bit, I have the things that I tell this agent to do. Well, here's the role of the agent, giving it instructions, the things that it can do. It doesn't have any knowledge. It doesn't have any actions or tools. What it does do, though, however, is it calls into these different connected agents. So as I mentioned before, it's orchestrator, depending on what the question comes in, it'll then fire that off to either this filings agent or the comparator agent. And if I look at, how I built this out, somewhat simple in the existing Foundry environment. I tell it, what am I using? This. In this case, it's using this agent. I have to give it a unique name, and I tell it what I want it to do. Like, only activate this agent when I have a question coming in around summarizing or analyzing 10Ks, so on and so forth. So that's the information around how I've told this agent to connect into the other agents. All right, so that's what exists in the existing Foundry environment. Well, now if I go into the new Foundry experience, so this is the new Foundry experience, if you haven't seen it before. So you still got the same notion of a project, but it's way different in terms of how I interact or how I use the components within it. I don't want to say it's way different. It's just different in terms of user interface. So I have this build concept, and the build concept brings me up the different things that I have. So I've recreated those agents. I've got a couple of others because I've expanded upon it, but here's my agent. Here's that same analyst orchestrator. If I go into this analyst orchestrator, yeah, I've got things like tools and knowledge, but what's missing? I don't see connected agents in here. So I don't have a way of actually saying, all right, this agent really should call this agent or a series of agents. It's not here. So how do I do that? Well, it's in workflows. So again, I'm under the build environment inside of the new Foundry. And again, here is the new Foundry toggle switch. It's got a workflow. So I've built the workflow to simulate what I was doing inside of the old Foundry experience. And now I have it here. So let me go into that workflow. So here's the workflow. And obviously it looks way different than what you had seen before. I'll just zoom in a little bit on this. So I have to build this out. So I have a starting point. I set some variable. The variable is what I'm passing into it based on what I want to see. In this case, it's a user message. So whatever that last message was, the last message text, then it goes into the agent. So I'm telling it to actually call out to an agent, what am I bringing in? So that's that input message. So if you've done any type of like ETL type work or transformation, there's some UI, I kind of equate it to this. Like, here's my input, here's my flow, here's the next step of agents or next step of activities that I want to run. That's basically what I'm doing here. So I'm telling it what do I want it to know and understand as I'm running through and connected it. And yes, you can see things like, hey, what's the details on this agent? Well, I'm using that same 4.1 model for this agent. I see the instructions that it's doing, so on and so forth. So this then sends a message. If I look at the instructions, and I probably should have told you that, if I look at the instructions on this agent, it's different. So the agent orchestrator that I had in the old model said basically, this is what I want to do. Look for these things. In this case, I'm building like a router sense of logic, and I'm doing it through instructions, not true, programming logic, but I'm telling it what it needs to do. And in this case, it's slightly different based upon how I want this thing to act. So I'm telling it the rules, things that it should look for, keywords. But again, this is part of a large language model, so it's going to just determine these things on the fly. And then what I'm doing is I'm going into an if then else condition. The output of this orchestrator is going to be some trigger words that will then drop into, well, where does it need to go? And in this case, you see what's actually happening. I'm doing an if, else if, and then a couple of series of different else ifs, depending upon if it actually had both indications. So I send this out to do a summarizer agent or the peer compare or the filings and the peer compare. And then else, it actually sends a message saying, please rewrite your question. So that's how I actually construct the new workflow. There is a preview in here, so I could actually now work with this. So I could send a message saying, please analyze the current set of 10K for Contoso. So what you'll see will happen is it's now actually looking at this project, this workflow. determining where it needs to go. You see the messages, the filings coming out. Eventually, this should route it over to this side, which is the filing summarizer, which it actually did. So I could see this running through, and it's actually giving my answer. Now, this is really good. Again, like I said, I could see the workflow, how it's actually happening. I could also debug this and see what are those different steps. I could look at the metadata that's being sent over. So a lot of bells and whistles inside of this new environment. Now, let me give you a little tip. Underneath this, and I'll just get rid of the visualizer. There's a YAML definition for everything that you're seeing on this visualization part, like this whole thing that I showed you here. So instead of me just going in and try to connect the different lines, if you will, if I have the YAML, I can just pop in the YAML here and it will automatically build the visualizer for you. Now, why am I telling you that? Well, what I did for my scenario, I didn't want to create, this one's not that hard. I mean, I literally could have just built the if then else. By the way that you actually work with this, you see that there's this plus sign. This is where it brings up like the workflow action. So I could tell it, do this if then else, I could do some basics. I can invoke another agent. That's how I pick that stuff up. So I could build this thing out, but what if I actually use a large language model to define the YAML for me? That's literally what I did. So I'm going to show you exactly what I did here. So this is in ChatGPT. Here is that's maybe a little bit too big. Here's my prompt. So I basically played dumb. I said, hey, I developed this existing connected agents inside of the original Foundry. What I did is I gave it the pathway or the URL to the new information about the workflows, and there's some examples that are in this Microsoft site. And I said, hey, I don't understand what I need to do. Please explain, insights and tell me some information about what it takes to recreate this inside of the new Foundry tool, and also, give me some information about it. So the output of this, gave me exactly information like what's new versus the old, what can it do. Here's several different patterns about building it. And then it gave me some example YAML, which is great, but this is just the scaffolding. So I got a little bit more involved, and I said, all right, well, this is the role of that orchestrator, which was the initial agent that I showed you in the original Foundry project. And I said, this is what that agent was trying to do. Please recreate that as a YAML. So it said, all right, great. Now I understand more about what it was trying to do. And ultimately, if I look at this, it's giving me the YAML to create that set of agents. So let me do this for you on the fly. So this is that full YAML. Let me copy that code. Let me go back into Foundry. I'm going to go back and I'm going to actually create a new workflow. By the way, there's a couple of workflow patterns. I just went into the blank one, but there's several different ones, like if you're doing a chat-centric one versus some other. So I'm going to go into the YAML. What I'm going to do is just replace this YAML with what ChatGPT gave me. Let me go back into the visualizer, and look, lo and behold, it actually built all that from scratch. So again, I could go through a couple more iterations because there's probably additional things that I might want to do within this, but you can see where I'm using a tool like ChatGPT or M365 Copilot, or fill in the blank. You could use whatever you want. But I come back in here, and now I have a full set of YAML that I can just drop in, and it builds all of that workflow for me automatically. So I'm leveraging agents or LLMs to help me build an agentic workflow. So anyway, that is the introduction, if you will, into workflows inside of Foundry. But more importantly, it's like, how do you go from your existing connected agents into the new workflow concept inside of the new Foundry UI and not have to do all this interconnecting? Just leverage an LLM to create the YAML for you. Anyway, hopefully you found that useful, and comment, subscribe, and like, and Till next time. Thanks.